She looked straight past me, her voice dripping with contempt, and whispered in Spanish, "That poor old man means nothing, but his son is my golden ticket." The words cut deeper than any knife. In that moment, I wasn't just being insulted, I was watching greed and betrayal circle the one person I loved most. Before we dive into today's story, I recommend you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. I have spent most of my life in the open air, among pine trees and rugged canyons, where the wind carries the scent of earth instead of exhaust fumes. At 62, I am no longer a ranger patrolling trails and warning campers about fire danger. Those years of duty are behind me, though they shaped my spine and my patience. These days, I work in a modest wood shop on the edge of Santa Fe, New Mexico, turning rough lumber into tables, chairs, and picture frames. The rhythm of sanding and the low hum of a saw have become my companions. To some people, it may look like a retreat from the world. To me, it feels like a steady heartbeat. My wife, Ellen, is gone. She was a high school Spanish teacher, quick with laughter and firm when it came to rules of grammar. She passed away 5 years ago, and yet her voice still follows me in the workshop. She taught me her language in the evenings at the kitchen table, patient when my tongue stumbled over verbs and accents. I learned enough to follow her stories, her poems, even her sighs. What began as a way to surprise her turned into a part of me I carry everywhere. It is not a talent I advertise. Most people assume I know only English. That assumption, in time, will change the course of everything. Our son Damon is 33. He is sharp, ambitious, and restless. The founder of a solar energy startup based in Albuquerque. His days are filled with investor calls, presentations, and travel. He moves at a pace I cannot follow. We were close when he was a boy. He used to come with me on long patrols through Carson National Forest, eyes wide when he spotted elk tracks or the sudden arc of a hawk. But adulthood has pulled us apart. Damon believes in speed, in closing deals before someone else can. I believe in slow hands and careful eyes, because wood punishes anyone in a hurry. The difference between us often leaves me quiet when we meet. He speaks about growth charts and capital, while I speak about sanding against the grain and repairing old dovetails. He looks at land as leverage. I look at land as memory. The rift is not born of anger, but of two philosophies staring at each other across a canyon. I worry about him, though I rarely say it out loud. My anchor is the old property at Taos Canyon, a piece of ground my father tended, and I swore never to part with. Ellen's ashes rest there, beneath a stand of junipers we planted together. When I visit, I sit on a bench I built from salvaged beams, polished by years of weather. That bench is where I speak to her, not aloud but in the mind, asking if I am guiding Damon the way we once promised each other we would. Sometimes I feel she answers in the whisper of wind. I am not wealthy. My truck is a dented Ford from the 90s. My pleasures are simple: a radio that plays country ballads through static, a pot of coffee that tastes a little burnt, and the notebook Ellen gave me in our last Christmas together. Its leather cover is worn smooth, and I write in it each night. Small notes, observations, lessons drawn from wood and weather. I once wrote, "Strength lies in the grain." The more storms a tree endures, the more beautiful its rings. Those words keep me steady. From the outside, my life looks quiet, even predictable. I wake with the sun, sharpen tools, sweep shavings from the floor, and stop only when twilight paints the mountains red. Yet beneath the calm lies a steady unease. Damon is chasing a dream that moves faster than his judgment. He wants everything new, bright, and immediate, while I have learned that the slowest growth is the strongest. The land at Taos is more than soil. It is a covenant, a story written through generations. Ellen believed it should never be used as collateral, never turned into numbers on a bank sheet. I promised her the same. I intend to keep that promise. Still, I sense the day will come when Damon, desperate to expand his company, will look at that land as the solution, and someone else may see it as an opportunity. What I do not yet know, as I plane the edge of a cedar board and breathe in its clean bite, is how soon that test will arrive. The knowledge Ellen gave me, her language, her patience, waits like a hidden tool in a drawer. It will be the blade I never expected to need, sharper than any chisel. Life has a way of taking what we thought was sentimental and turning it into survival. My world of wood, silence, and memory is about to collide with Damon's world of investors and charm. And when it does, I will have to choose not only how to protect him, but how to honor her. If you're still watching and felt the sting of being underestimated, drop number 1 in the comments so I know you understand that pain. The phone rang just as I was putting away my chisels for the night. Damon's voice burst through the line with the kind of excitement that made him sound like a boy again, even though he was a man in his 30s now. He wanted me to come down to Austin to meet his fiancée, Sofia Rivera. He spoke of her with a breathless energy, calling her the best thing that had ever happened to him. "Dad, you're going to love her," he said, his words tumbling over one another. "She's smart, stunning, and she believes in what I'm building." His description was so glowing it sounded rehearsed, like a pitch to an investor, rather than a son telling his father about love. I told him I'd come, of course. A father doesn't say no to a meeting like that, but when I hung up the phone, I sat for a long time in the workshop, staring at the curls of cedar shavings on the floor. Damon had always rushed into things. As a boy, he ran down trails before looking at the map. As a man, he signed contracts before reading the fine print. Now, he was sprinting headlong into marriage. I wanted to be happy for him, but something inside me tightened. Austin greeted me with its usual buzz, music spilling out of bars, neon signs flickering, the air warm even after sundown. Damon insisted on a dinner at one of the city's most upscale Mexican restaurants, a place filled with glass chandeliers and the scent of cumin and lime. The host led us to a table in the corner where Sofia waited with her parents, Ricardo and Carmen. She was undeniably beautiful, with dark hair cascading down her shoulders and a smile that seemed polished for the camera. Her parents had the same aura of practiced charm, like a family that had rehearsed for this very performance. Damon couldn't contain his enthusiasm. He launched into talk of his company's future, the solar fields he planned to expand, the investors who had shown interest. Somewhere in that torrent of ambition, he slipped in a suggestion that I could help by putting the Taos Canyon land up as collateral. "Just for leverage," he said, brushing it off as if it were nothing more than a business detail. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. That land wasn't leverage, it was a promise. But I swallowed my protest, reminding myself that tonight was about meeting Sofia, not starting a fight. The plates arrived, enchiladas dripping with cheese, carne asada served sizzling. Damon excused himself to take a call, stepping away with his phone pressed to his ear. That was when the real conversation began. Sofia leaned toward her parents, her voice lowering into Spanish. Most people in that restaurant would have assumed I was deaf to it, just another gringo smiling politely at sounds he couldn't untangle. But Ellen's patient lessons returned to me with every syllable. "Él es solo un viejo pobre," Sofia said softly, her lips curling into a smirk. "He's just a poor old man." My stomach turned, though my face didn't show it. She went on, confident in my supposed ignorance. "No tiene nada excepto esa tierra. Firmará y será nuestro. He has nothing but that land. He'll sign, and it will be ours." Her mother, Carmen, dabbed delicately at her mouth with a napkin before adding, "La boda debe ser rápida. Obtenemos poder legal y vendemos antes de que dude. The wedding must be quick. We'll secure legal power and sell before he has second thoughts." Ricardo nodded, his expression grim and calculating. They spoke of me, my land, my son, as if we were assets in a portfolio. I chewed a piece of tortilla slowly, forcing my hands to remain steady. Inside, their words cut like a saw through soft pine. Old, poor, disposable. They didn't see the history planted in that soil, the ashes buried beneath the junipers. They didn't care. To them, it was a golden ticket, and I was the fool standing between them and cash. I remembered something Ellen once told me. Understanding doesn't always mean speaking. Sometimes it means listening until the right moment comes. I let the lesson guide me now. I kept my face blank, my eyes politely distant, as if I were lost in the texture of the food. If they noticed anything in my expression, it would only be disinterest. Damon returned, smiling, oblivious. He picked up his glass and toasted, talking about futures and families. I raised my glass too, playing my part. But the truth had already cracked the evening wide open. Like a carpenter who spots a hairline fracture in a beam, I knew that pushing too soon would splinter everything. Better to let the pressure build until the fault line revealed itself in full. As the dinner ended, I offered handshakes and compliments, the portrait of a welcoming father. Sophia's eyes glittered, confident. She thought she had charmed me. Ricardo and Carmen looked equally satisfied, certain their performance had gone unnoticed. Only I carried the knowledge of what had really been said at that table. When I walked back to my hotel through the Austin night, the city felt louder than usual, the music sharper, the laughter emptier. The trap they thought they had set was already plain to me. They believed I was the weak point. In truth, I was the only obstacle that stood in their way. If you're still watching and sense that something isn't as perfect as it seems, type number 2 below to show you're catching the hidden cracks. The morning sun in Austin slipped through the blinds of my hotel room, painting thin gold bars across the carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed with Ellen's old leather-bound notebook open on my lap. My pen hovered for a moment before the words poured out, sharp and deliberate. I wrote down everything I had overheard the night before, each phrase in Spanish etched onto the page with translations beneath them. Viejo pobre, he's just a poor old man. Firmará y será nuestro. Él firmará y será nuestro. I wanted to capture every detail before memory softened the edges. My hand trembled once, not from age, but from anger. To be dismissed so casually, to be reduced to an obstacle in their scheme, was painful enough. But the thought of Damon, blind and trusting, standing on the edge of this trap, filled me with something colder than rage. I snapped the notebook shut and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Whatever happened next, I would not forget, and I would not forgive. Damon arrived with a bright smile, eager to show me his world. He took me to his company's offices downtown. The building gleamed with glass and steel, filled with the chatter of young employees in smart casual clothes. Posters about renewable energy and sustainable futures lined the walls. Damon moved through the space with confidence, shaking hands, introducing me as his father. His pride was genuine, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel proud too. Then he brought Sophia into the circle. "This is Sophia," he told a cluster of employees. "She's been helping me refine our messaging. She's basically a communications advisor now." His tone was affectionate, but also admiring, as though her approval added legitimacy to his vision. She shook hands with the staff, her smile warm, but her eyes calculating. I noticed how quickly she positioned herself at Damon's side, as though claiming territory. Later, while Damon spoke with a small group about solar field permits, I lingered near the coffee station. That was when I heard Sophia again. She was speaking Spanish with one of the bilingual employees, a young man with nervous eyes. "Él es una inversión," she said, her voice soft but firm. "He's an investment." The man looked startled, glanced at me, then back at her, but he said nothing. She continued, outlining vague plans about asegurar el futuro, securing the future, in a tone that left no doubt she wasn't talking about Damon's dreams, but her own. I stirred sugar into my coffee, pretending not to understand. But inside my chest, the cold block of certainty grew heavier. This wasn't paranoia. It was a pattern, repeated and consistent. Damon was her golden ticket, and she was laying the foundation brick by brick. When Damon and I finally left the office, he was in high spirits. The energy of the staff seemed to fuel him. He talked about expansion, new partnerships, and the Series B funding round that loomed just ahead. As we walked to his car, he spoke with the ease of someone confessing good news. "Dad, I've been thinking. We could use Taos Canyon land as collateral, just temporarily, you know? The investors would love the show of stability. Once the funding comes through, we can clear it and everything will be fine." I stopped walking for a moment, my boots scuffing against the sidewalk. The land was not just soil, it was Ellen, it was family, it was the weight of generations. I forced my voice into calm. That land isn't meant for business, Damon. He frowned, brushing the thought aside with the impatience of youth. Dad, it's just business. We're building a future here. Don't you want to see us succeed? His eyes glowed with conviction, the kind only love and ambition can create. I looked at him, wanting to shake sense into him, but I saw only a son who believed he was protecting his dream. If I pushed too hard now, I would drive him closer to her. So, I smiled faintly, nodding as though I were merely cautious, not opposed. We'll talk about it later, I said. He seemed relieved, interpreting my restraint as acceptance. He started the car, humming along to a song on the radio, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beside him. I turned my face toward the window, watching the city blur past. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. An old man, yes, but not helpless. I had been underestimated before, and it had always been a mistake. They thought I was ignorant, irrelevant, weak. What they didn't realize was that silence is a shield as much as a weapon. That night, back in the quiet of my hotel, I laid Ellen's notebook open again. My notes from the dinner glared up at me, joined now by new words from the office. Inversión, securing the future, collateral. I underlined each one with deliberate strokes. The first blow had been struck. Not against me, but again now, but against Damon's future. And I had felt it land. Now, it was time to plan how to strike back. If you're still watching and can feel the tension rising with every subtle betrayal, comment number 3. So I know you're locked into the storm. Damon insisted I join him for dinner at his apartment the next evening. It was a sleek downtown place with glass walls overlooking the sprawl of Austin, the kind of place that whispered success even when silent. He had stocked the fridge with takeout boxes from a gourmet market. And while he set the table, he talked about investors and timelines the way some people talk about the weather. I tried to listen, but every sentence reminded me how far he had drifted into a world where speed mattered more than solidity. When we finally sat down, I decided to try. My fork hovered over roasted chicken while I searched for the right words. Damon, I began carefully. Sometimes things that move too fast burn out before they've had the chance to last. Your mother and I, we took time to really know each other. We built trust brick by brick. That's what made it strong. He sighed, already bristling. Dad, this isn't 50 years ago. Things are different now. People move faster. We know when something feels right. His tone was sharp, defensive, as if my concern were an attack. I just don't want you blindsided, I pressed gently. I've seen men lose everything because they trusted the wrong person. It doesn't mean you shouldn't love, but it means... Stop. His voice cut across the table, hard as steel. You always see the worst in people. Why can't you just be happy for me? For us? His eyes were blazing, and I knew I had hit the wall I feared most. The more I pushed, the more he pulled away. Before I could respond, Sophia entered from the kitchen, carrying a bowl of salad as though she had been waiting for her cue. She set it down and smiled at me with practiced sweetness. Mr. Mercer, she said warmly, Damon tells me you used to be a ranger. That must have been such an honorable life, protecting the forests, keeping people safe. Her tone dripped with admiration. I nodded, measuring her every move. It had its moments, I said simply. She leaned closer, her hand brushing Damon's. I hope one day we can visit your land in Taos. It sounds beautiful, like a place full of history. Family is so important. Her voice quivered just enough to sound sincere. Damon beamed, watching her as though she had just proved every doubt of mine wrong. To him, she was the bridge between us. To me, she was reading from a script. I could almost hear the stage directions in her tone. Smile here, soften voice there, make him feel seen. I decided to test the waters. The Taos Canyon land, I said slowly, is not for business. It's not collateral. It's a promise. I won't see it tied to loans or contracts. The room froze for a heartbeat. Sophia tilted her head, eyes wide in feigned innocence. Damon slammed his fork down, the sound ringing sharp against the plate. Dad, enough. You keep dragging everything into suspicion. Can't you see she cares about me? You're poisoning this with your mistrust. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from the ache of watching him close himself off. I could argue more, but what would it accomplish? He'd only retreat deeper into her arms, convinced I was the enemy. So I let my shoulders sink, softening my tone. I'm sorry, I murmured. I didn't mean to upset you. I just worry. Damon exhaled, his expression softening slightly, though his guard remained. Sophia reached over to squeeze my hand lightly, a gesture so perfectly timed it felt rehearsed. We understand, Mr. Mercer, she said with a sympathetic smile. Change can be hard, but love is worth trusting. I nodded, though inside I tasted the bitterness of defeat. Every word I had tried to use as a warning had backfired, painting me as the cautious, cynical father standing in the way of his son's happiness. The more I spoke, the more convincing her performance became. When the meal ended, I excused myself early, claiming fatigue. Back at the hotel, I opened Ellen's notebook and wrote, "Words alone won't save him. Proof will." The ink bled slightly into the page, as though underlining the truth. I stared out the window at the Austin skyline, neon lights flickering against the dark. Tonight had shown me my warnings meant nothing. If I wanted to protect Damon, I couldn't do it with speeches or cautions. I would need evidence, hard, undeniable evidence that even love's blindness could not ignore. And until I had it, I would keep my mouth shut, play the part, and let them believe I was harmless. If you're still watching and realize that blind trust can be the most dangerous gamble of all, write number 4 to let me know you see it too. The evening shimmered with all the polish Damon had worked so hard to create. He rented out a rooftop lounge in downtown Austin, complete with soft jazz, strings of Edison bulbs swaying in the night breeze, and trays of hors d'oeuvres carried by waiters in crisp black uniforms. From every corner came the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and conversation about investments, markets, and futures. Damon moved through the crowd like a rising star, his arm draped proudly around Sophia. I stood near the edge of the terrace, a glass of sparkling water in my hand, watching the city lights flicker beneath us. Damon's friends and a few investors came to shake my hand, offering compliments about my son's vision. They praised his leadership, his courage, and more than once, they mentioned the brilliant woman by his side. Sophia played her part with practiced ease, touching Damon's arm at the right moments, tilting her head to laugh at his jokes, and speaking about the promise of renewable energy as though it were her lifelong passion. I watched her with the cool eye of a ranger on patrol. To the world, she was charm-wrapped in elegance. To me, she was something far darker, and I knew the mask would slip again if I waited long enough. The moment came after Damon left our table to greet a new group of investors. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her posture softening, her smile fading the instant his eyes were elsewhere. She turned toward her parents, who were seated close by, and lowered her voice into Spanish. "Necesitamos que firme pronto," she said. "We need him to sign soon." Her mother, Carmen, sipped her wine and nodded. "Sí, antes de que empiece a sospechar." Yes, before he starts to suspect. Her father, Ricardo, adjusted his tie, his eyes gleaming under the golden lights. "Presiónalo con la boda. El poder legal vendrá después. Pressure him with the wedding. The legal power will come afterward." Then Sophia said the phrase that turned my stomach to stone. "Él es nuestro billete de oro." He is our golden ticket. The words cut through me like a blade. I kept my face neutral, my glass steady, but inside I felt something break. Damon, my son, my blood, wasn't a man to them. He was a ticket, a prize, a vault waiting to be emptied. I stared across the terrace at him, laughing easily with his friends, his pride shining like the city skyline behind him. He had no idea the people closest to him were sharpening their knives. I considered walking straight across the rooftop, calling her out in front of everyone, watching the room fall silent as the truth unraveled. For a split second, The temptation nearly consumed me. But then I saw Damon turn, his eyes finding Sophia across the crowd, his smile wide and full of love. My throat tightened. If I spoke now, if I blurted out the truth without proof, he would never believe me. He would see only jealousy, suspicion, an old man trying to ruin his happiness. So, I swallowed the fury like poison, holding it deep inside where it burned against my ribs. I forced myself to smile politely when Sophia looked back at me, unaware that I had understood every word. She returned a bland smile, the mask sliding back into place, confident that her secret was still safe. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I shook hands, accepted empty compliments, and listened to conversations that barely registered. All the while, my mind was replaying Sophia's voice, those words like nails driven into wood. Golden ticket. By the time dessert was served, I felt as though my skin were stretched thin over a fire. When Damon asked why I was leaving early, I told him I was tired, that the long day had caught up with me. He kissed my cheek, grateful I had made the effort to come. Sophia offered me a smile so sweet it nearly curdled in the air. "Rest well, Mr. Mercer," she said, her tone honeyed. I nodded, said nothing, and walked out into the warm Austin night. The streets hummed with traffic, neon lights flashing in reds and blues, the city alive with noise. But all I heard was the echo of her words. Golden ticket, the insult of it, the audacity, fueled something in me I hadn't felt since my Ranger days. Not just anger, resolve. A line had been crossed, and I would not forgive it. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the skyline. For years I had thought my battles were behind me, that my life would be measured in wood grain and quiet mornings. But tonight, I understood differently. This was a war, silent for now, but inevitable. They had chosen Damon as their mark, and in doing so, they had chosen me as their enemy. I whispered into the night, a vow that carried only to my own ears. The war has begun, and this time, I will not lose. The hotel room was dim when I returned from the rooftop party, the city lights outside bleeding through the curtains in fractured streaks. I sat heavily on the chair by the window, the echoes of laughter from the evening still ringing in my ears. Sophia's voice haunted me more than the music, more than the clinking of glasses. Él es nuestro billete de oro. Damon wasn't her partner, wasn't her future, he was their golden ticket. I pulled Ellen's old notebook from my jacket pocket, flipped to a fresh page, and scrawled across the top. Proof. Only proof can save him. My handwriting shook, not from age, but from the weight of what I now knew. Words wouldn't be enough. Damon's heart was blind, and my warnings only pushed him further into her arms. If I confronted them now, he'd side with her. That realization was a knife I had to swallow. The night stretched out as I wrestled with two choices. The first, to storm into Damon's life, tear away the mask, and tell him everything I'd heard. It was the honest path, the one that demanded immediate action. But I pictured his face, the disbelief, the anger, the wounded pride. I saw him turning his back on me, shutting the door, and leaving himself defenseless in her hands. That path would destroy us both. The second choice was darker, to pretend, to play the role they expected. The old father eager to be charmed, willing to be convinced, to nod, to smile, to offer my blessing while secretly preparing the snare. It was humiliating, but it was the only way to keep Damon close, the only way to gather what I needed. Proof. Evidence so undeniable, it would break through even love's fog. I leaned back, staring at my reflection in the glass. The lines on my face seemed harsher under the neon glow. If I must play the fool to save my son, I whispered to the empty room, then I will. Resolve settled over me like a heavy coat. I picked up the phone from the nightstand and scrolled through old numbers until I found one I hadn't dialed in years. Thomas Grant. We'd worked together when he was a legal consultant for the Forest Service, a man sharp with contracts and sharper with people. After retirement, he had turned his talents toward investigating shady land deals and fraudulent businesses. If anyone could help me, it was him. The line rang 3 times before a familiar gravelly voice answered. "Hal? Haven't heard from you in a decade." "Ah." "Tom," I said, keeping my voice steady, I need help. It's about Damon, about who he's marrying. There was silence, then a sigh. Come on, Hal. You know I don't handle family spats. This isn't a spat, I said firmly. It's fraud. I overheard her and her parents. They want his company, his money, and my land. They think I don't understand Spanish, but I do. And I heard every word. Another pause. Then his tone shifted, all business. All right, tell me what you've got. I laid out the events of the past week. The dinner at the restaurant, the words whispered in Spanish, the rooftop confession. I repeated every phrase I had written in Ellen's notebook, translating them with precision. Tom didn't interrupt. He listened like a man gathering evidence for a case. Finally, he said, "You're right not to confront them. You'd lose him. What you need is evidence, real evidence, paper trails, messages, bank records, something that makes it impossible to deny." I don't know where to start, I admitted. I do, he replied. I'll connect you with a team, private investigators who specialize in financial forensics. They'll dig into her family, her past, everything. You'll get your proof. But you'll need to play along in the meantime. Keep them comfortable. Make them think you're buying into the act. The thought of smiling at Sophia again, of pretending to welcome her, made my stomach churn. But I understood. Then that's what I'll do, I said quietly. We ended the call, and I set the phone down on the nightstand. The room was still, the air heavy, but my path was clear now. I wasn't simply Damon's father anymore. I was his shield, invisible though it had to be. I stood and pulled the curtains open wide. Austin glittered below me, bright and deceptive, like Sophia's smile. My reflection stared back, tired eyes, gray hair, but beneath it all, a fire I thought I had left behind years ago. This was no longer about approval or family dinners. This was war. And though they thought me weak, thought me blind, I still had one weapon they had overlooked: patience. Sophia's family grew bolder after the rooftop party. I could see it in the way her father shook my hand with smug confidence, in the way her mother spoke to me as though I were already resigned to their presence. They believed I had accepted her, that my resistance had crumbled under Damon's joy. Damon, bless him, looked relieved. He laughed more easily when I was in the room, squeezed my shoulder when introducing me to his friends, and spoke with pride about how his father was finally on board. Inside, every smile I gave was a blade turned against my own heart. I had to play the fool, and the cost of that act was heavier than I'd imagined. Sophia began including me in the preparations for the wedding, pulling me into conversations about venues, floral arrangements, and menus. She did it all with a softness that was almost convincing, asking my opinion as though she valued it. I listened, nodding politely, while my mind translated the subtext. Make him feel comfortable, make him believe. Damon watched those exchanges with a glow in his eyes, convinced we were building a bridge toward family unity. One evening, as we sat around Damon's apartment, Sophia leaned forward with a shy smile. "Mr. Mercer," she said, her voice dripping with warmth, "you must be proud to see Damon achieve so much, and soon we will be one family. Maybe you and I could visit Taos Canyon together. Damon tells me it's such a beautiful property." My stomach tightened, but I kept my tone mild. "It is," I said. "It holds a lot of history." She clasped Damon's hand with theatrical affection. "Imagine the opportunities. Perhaps, with the right vision, that land could support Damon's company in ways even you never dreamed." Damon looked at me, hopeful, as if waiting for my approval. "Dad, she's not wrong. Selling or leveraging it could really push us forward." The words were like a knife sliding beneath my ribs. That land wasn't numbers on a balance sheet. It was Ellen. It was family. It was the soil of our beginnings. But I smiled faintly and said only, "I'll think about it." Sophia's eyes glittered with victory. Damon exhaled with relief. And I sat there, burning. That night in my hotel, I poured whiskey into a glass I didn't really want and stared at the city lights. The silence pressed on me, heavy as stone. I opened Ellen's notebook and wrote in jagged lines, "The cost of silence is pain, but silence is the only shield I have." My phone buzzed as I set the pen down. It was Thomas Grant. His voice was low and steady when I answered. "Hal, we've got something. The team in Houston pulled records. The Riveras are drowning in debt. Ricardo has gambling markers he never paid off, and Carmen was tied to a boutique scam in San Antonio. Nothing that put them in prison, but enough lawsuits to paint a clear picture." I gripped the phone tighter. "So, it's real." "It's real," Tom said, "and that's just the surface. We'll dig deeper. But this already confirms what you heard. You were right not to tip your hand." I thanked him, my throat thick. The confirmation brought no joy, only the cold steel of necessity. Proof was building, but Damon was still blind. Days later, I joined them at a family dinner. Sophia's parents were all polished charm, smiling across the table at Damon, complimenting him on his company's potential. Between courses, Sophia raised her glass and said, "To new beginnings, to family, and to opportunities that will make us all stronger." Then she turned to Damon, her hand resting on his. "Maybe, after the wedding, you and your father can decide together what to do with Taos Canyon. It would mean so much to see our families united in such a way." Damon nodded, glancing at me. "She's right, Dad. We'll talk about it. Together." Bah. The moment was unbearable. Every instinct screamed to rise, to slam my fist on the table, to expose her schemes. But instead, I lifted my own glass, forced to smile, and let the poison of silence slip down my throat. When the evening ended, Damon hugged me with warmth. "Thanks for being here, Dad. It means everything." I walked away with his arms still echoing around me, carrying the unbearable truth alone. Back at the hotel, I sat once more by the window, the notebook open on my lap. My reflection stared back in the glass, an old man who looked complicit in his own son's undoing. Yet beneath the weariness, there was fire. This silence, this torment, it was not surrender. It was strategy. The report from Thomas arrived in a thick envelope, slid under my hotel room door with the quiet efficiency of a courier who didn't linger. I sat at the desk, the lamplight yellow against the papers, and began to read. What I saw turned my suspicions into certainties. The Riveras had a trail, thin in places but undeniable. There were whispers of a money laundering scheme in Houston, never prosecuted but documented in financial reviews. Wire transfers moved through shadow accounts, the kind that smelled of desperation and debt. Carmen's boutique in San Antonio had collapsed under lawsuits, leaving angry creditors behind. And Sophia herself had once been engaged to a Dallas businessman, a short-lived romance that ended the moment he required her to sign a prenuptial agreement. The pattern was clear: charm, seduce, gain access, then disappear when protections appeared. I leaned back, the paper spread across the desk like battlefield maps. The evidence was damning, but I knew Damon's heart. Numbers on a page would not cut through Sophia's rehearsed tears. He would cling to her story, insist that the past was misunderstood, that love made people do foolish things. If I brought this to him in private, he'd turn away from me again. No, this needed more. It needed a stage, a place where the truth would not just confront him, but surround him, undeniable, with witnesses whose judgment he respected. It had to be public, precise, and final. I closed the file, the weight of the decision pressing against my chest. To build that stage, I would need time, and to get time, I would have to continue the charade. I would have to smile when she spoke of family, nod when she dreamed aloud of futures built on land that wasn't hers, and laugh when she wrapped her arms around my son in performances that fooled everyone but me. The next week tested me. Sophia called to invite me to a tasting for the wedding menu, her voice bright as glass. At the venue, she leaned across the table, asking for my opinion on entrees, wines, the kind of china that should line the tables. Every detail was designed to make me feel included, to paint the picture of unity. Damon sat beside her, glowing at the sight of us conversing without friction. He thought I had softened. He thought the battle was over. It wasn't. Her true test came later, When she arrived at my hotel with a folder, she placed it on the desk, her smile small and apologetic. "Just a formality," she said sweetly. "A deposit for the banquet hall. Damon is so busy with investors, and I thought, perhaps you could help us sign. They just need a co-signature." The folder was bait, and I knew it. I opened it carefully, scanning the language. Hidden among the routine legal phrases was a clause granting access to joint financial liability. Clever. Small enough to appear insignificant, sharp enough to become a dagger later. My instinct was to shove it back at her, to expose the trick then and there, but instead I exhaled, forced a weary chuckle, and said, "Wedding paperwork already confuses me. But if it helps Damon, I'll sign." I scrawled my name, making sure to note the page number, the line, the hidden clause. My pen left not just ink, but ammunition. I handed it back, my expression mild. Her relief was almost imperceptible, a soft sigh, a flicker in her eyes. She believed me. She believed I was falling into line, that the old man had grown soft. That night, I called Thomas. My voice was low, steady, stripped of any pretense. "We need to go bigger. This paperwork proves their method, but I want more than scraps. I don't want whispers of doubt. I want a hammer of truth." "You'll have it," Thomas replied. "I'll expand the search. We'll track emails, texts, any correspondence we can access. I'll reach out to the Dallas businessman, too. People like him rarely forget near disasters." I thanked him and hung up, staring out at the Austin skyline. The neon lights pulsed like warnings, like signals across a darkened forest. My silence was holding, my mask convincing. But each day the strain grew heavier. Damon's laughter with Sophia was a knife, and her false warmth toward me was salt in the wound. Still, I endured. Because in war, patience wins. The Riveras thought they had me fooled, that I was complicit in their play. They didn't see the stage I was building, the stage on which their own words and deeds would condemn them. As I closed Ellen's notebook for the night, I whispered into the dark. Not whispers. Thunder. That's what it will take. The Avalon Club in downtown Austin glowed with quiet prestige the night of the engagement party. Polished marble floors reflected the golden chandeliers, and the air buzzed with the low hum of conversations among investors, colleagues, and friends who had known our family for decades. Waiters glided through the room with trays of champagne, and a jazz trio played soft melodies that wrapped the evening in warmth. Damon was radiant. He moved through the crowd with Sophia on his arm, introducing her with pride. "My fiancée," he said again and again, his smile bright, his voice filled with conviction. Sophia sparkled in emerald silk, her laughter lilting, her hand brushing against Damon's sleeve at all the right moments. Her parents trailed close, enjoying the glow of borrowed respect. To the casual eye, it was a perfect night. To me, it was the stage I had prepared. I waited until the dessert course had been served. Conversations were light, the mood at its peak. I tapped my glass with a spoon, the chime cutting across the room. Heads turned toward me, and Damon gave me a proud, expectant smile. Sophia tilted her head, the picture of affectionate anticipation. "Good evening," I began, my voice calm. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate a wonderful occasion. As a father, there is no greater joy than seeing your child happy. Tonight, I have seen that joy in my son." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I raised my glass toward Sophia. Her name is Sophia, and she has brought a light into Damon's life that I cannot deny. To Damon and Sophia. Glasses lifted, smiles spread. The room was safe again, or so they thought. I set my glass down and let the silence stretch a beat too long. Then I continued, this time in Spanish, my voice slow and deliberate. "Permítanme contarles una fábula." Let me tell you a fable. At first, the guests were confused, their brows furrowing. Sophia and her parents, however, lit up with pride, believing I was honoring their heritage. Then, behind me, the screen descended, words appearing in English as I spoke. "There was once a songbird," I said in Spanish, "with feathers like jewels and a voice like honey. She dreamed of flying to a land of plenty, where nests were high and filled with gold. But she did not want to make the journey herself. She found a noble eagle, strong and trusting. She sang to him, promised him love, promised to build a nest together. On the screen, the English translation glowed in sharp letters. Guests leaned forward, intrigued. But the songbird, I continued, never intended to build a life. She planned only to wait until the eagle trusted her, then take his nest for herself, leaving him to the cold sky. Gasps rustled across the room. I turned my eyes to Sophia, who sat frozen, her smile stiff, her knuckles white against Damon's arm. And the songbird's greatest mistake, I said softly, was forgetting the old owl who listened to her songs, an owl who understood every word. Silence pressed down on the room. Then Thomas Grant stepped forward from a corner table, carrying a leather folder. He opened it with deliberate care. "Good evening. My name is Thomas Grant. I've been working with Mr. Mercer to investigate Sofia Rivera and her family." His voice was crisp, his eyes sweeping the stunned audience. The screen behind him changed, filling with charts, numbers, and documents. The Riveras are not wealthy patrons fallen on hard times. They are drowning in debt. Lawsuits in San Antonio, unpaid gambling markers in Houston. And Sofia? This is not her first engagement. A photograph of a Dallas businessman appeared. She was engaged to Mr. William Hardy 2 years ago. The engagement ended when he discovered her attempt to secure his assets through marriage. A pattern, ladies and gentlemen, a pattern of fraud. Murmurs turned to shocked whispers. Damon's face drained of color. Sophia's lips moved soundlessly. "And finally," Thomas said, his tone like a gavel, "we have Sofia's own words." The screen filled with text messages, first in Spanish, then in bold English. "Él es nuestro billete de oro. He is our golden ticket." Another, "El cajero automático americano está lleno." The American ATM is full. The crowd recoiled. I heard the sharp intake of breath from people Damon respected most. His investors, his colleagues, his friends. Sophia's mask shattered. Her mother wept openly, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her father slumped, gray and small. I looked at Damon. His eyes darted between the screen and Sophia, disbelief collapsing into grief, grief collapsing into rage. He pulled his arm from her grasp, his shoulders shaking. Security arrived quietly, as arranged. Without protest, the Riveras were escorted out, their departure a silent march of shame. The ballroom was still. The jazz trio sat in silence, instruments idle. All that remained was Damon, standing like a man struck by lightning, his glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the marble floor. I walked to him slowly. He turned to me, eyes wide, face pale. Then he crumpled against me, sobs tearing from his chest. "Dad," he choked, "I'm sorry. I was blind." I wrapped my arms around him, steadying him like I had when he was a boy who'd fallen from his bicycle. "Now you see," I whispered into his hair, "and now you're free." In the weeks after the engagement party, Austin seemed quieter. The Riveras had vanished, their departure as swift as their arrival. Word spread quickly through the circles that mattered: investors, club members, colleagues. What should have been remembered as a glittering celebration was now a cautionary tale, a family's attempted fraud exposed under the weight of undeniable proof. Their names were spoken with disdain, their reputations permanently stained. Thomas Grant called me once more, his tone dry but satisfied. "They'll face formal investigations soon," he said. "Immigration, finance, civil lawsuits, you name it." "Their game is finished," I thanked him, though my heart was too tired for triumph. Justice mattered, yes, but what mattered more was my son. Damon was no longer the same man who had walked into that ballroom with Sophia on his arm. The shock of betrayal had stripped away his youthful illusions. For days, he moved quietly, speaking little, working late at the office. When he finally began to open up again, it was with a sober gravity I had never seen before. He looked me in the eye one evening and said, "I should have listened, Dad." I thought I was protecting her from you. Turns out, I needed you to protect me from her." We began to find our rhythm again. Damon poured himself into his company, but now with a keener sense of who to trust. He no longer mistook charm for integrity. He asked questions, watched for cracks, and understood that appearances could be carefully staged illusions. More than once, I caught glimpses of Ellen's steadiness in him, patience where there had been haste, thoughtfulness where there had been blind faith. One crisp morning in December, Damon and I drove out to Taos Canyon. The air was cold, the land vast and untamed, the pines whispering in the wind. This was the soil where Ellen and I had built the first dreams of our family, where Damon had learned to fish and to listen to stories under the stars. We walked together along the ridge, the ground crunching beneath our boots, the silence between us no longer heavy but healing. At one point, Damon stopped and gazed out at the horizon. "I almost let it go," he said softly. "This land, this history, I almost sold it for nothing." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "But you didn't. You still have it. You still have the truth." We stood there for a long while, side by side, no more words needed. Back in Austin, in the quiet of my study, I returned to Ellen's notebook. The leather was worn, the pages filled with my scrawls from the long months of deception and silence. I turned to the last empty page and wrote, "Truth is heavy, but it is the only foundation strong enough to carry love." I closed the book gently, as though sealing not just the story, but the pain that had come with it. I realized then that what I had done wasn't revenge. Revenge burns hot and fast, leaving nothing behind but ash. What I had carried out was protection, a colder, quieter act, but one born of love. Sometimes love isn't soft words or easy approval. Sometimes it is the willingness to bear the weight of silence, to play the fool, to endure pain so that someone you love may survive the fall. I thought of Ellen often in those days, her laughter, her quiet wisdom. She had given me the gift of her language, a key I didn't know I would one day need. Through her, I had heard the truth Sophia tried to hide. Through her, I had saved our son, and in that realization, I felt closer to her than I had in years. As winter deepened, Damon and I built something new, not just the rebuilding of trust, but the beginning of a stronger bond forged through trial. We shared dinners in silence when words were unnecessary, and conversations late into the night when memories demanded to be spoken. I saw in him a man tempered by fire, wiser and steadier. The world moved on. The Riveras became a fading headline in business gossip columns. The scandal that had shaken Damon turned into his armor, a reminder that no partnership, no love, no venture could survive if built on lies. And for me, the lesson was simple, though it had cost me more than I ever wished to pay. To truly protect those you love, you must listen to more than words. You must notice the silences, the slips, the unseen expressions. You must dare to see through the charm and hold fast to what is real. Because in the end, no matter how beautiful the mask, truth waits beneath it. And truth, though heavy, is the only weight worth carrying. Life has a way of testing the foundations on which we build our trust. At first glance, the world often dazzles us with beauty, charm, and the promise of belonging. Yet beneath the surface there may lie shadows, calculated intentions, and carefully woven deceptions. The heart, eager to believe, can easily mistake a mask for authenticity. And it is in those moments of blindness that wisdom must step forward, not as a weapon of vengeance, but as a lantern in the dark. The journey through betrayal is never gentle. It strips away illusions, leaving raw wounds where once there was joy. But hidden within that pain is the possibility of transformation. To uncover deceit is to suffer, but it is also to awaken. What feels like devastation in one season can become the soil of resilience in another. The hardest truths, when faced with courage, build stronger lives than the most seductive lies ever could. There is a lesson here about silence and patience. Not every battle is won by shouting the loudest or striking the fastest. Sometimes the greatest strength is found in waiting, in listening, in holding your fire until the truth can be revealed in undeniable light. Silence, though painful, can become a shield. Patience, though heavy, can be the most enduring form of love. When the right moment comes, wisdom speaks with a clarity no deception can withstand. It is also a reminder that language, observation, and memory are not just tools of communication, but guardians of truth. What is whispered when no one is thought to be listening often reveals more than any polished speech. To pay attention is to honor reality. To see beneath appearances is to preserve what is sacred. In the end, the story is not about ruin, but about renewal. Betrayal can break the surface of a life, but truth rebuilds the core. When lies collapse, what remains is not just loss. It is the chance to construct something real, something enduring. Love, grounded in honesty, becomes unshakable. Trust rebuilt on truth becomes a fortress. And so the message is clear. No matter how artful the disguise, no matter how convincing the performance, falsehood cannot hold. Truth, heavy though it may be, is the only foundation upon which lives of meaning and love can truly stand. These turning points remind us that setting boundaries and valuing ourselves is not just an act of courage, it's the foundation of living with dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one lesson from this story that you feel connected to, and how will you apply it in your own life? Let's grow together by sharing our thoughts. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to leave a 0. Your feedback helps us improve. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and spark reflection. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life with strength, honesty, and authenticity.